Hello, my name is Rinon and welcome to my walkthrough or guide for the first boss encounter in Eden's Promise Savage 12, the E12S, which is the final floor of the new raid tier. This is going to talk you through all of the mechanics, help you gain an understanding of them, and make sure that you're able to get through them using the strats that we used. Just to make it clear, these strats are definitely not going to be the most optimal or best in the world. There are going to be new, better strats discovered over the next couple of weeks, and I will make an updated video including those strats and telling you what I recommend you do when I've tested them myself. But for now, if you're going to be progging this fight very soon, you can use these and you can absolutely clear the fight with them. Okay, so before we get into it, I just wanted to say that if you liked this video or you found it helpful, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe and maybe leave a comment and let me know that it helped, because getting feedback from you is the most important thing for me. My channel also has memberships now enabled, so if you would like to become a member, you are more than welcome. So let's get into it. This is going to be a little bit of a lo-fi video. I'm just going to watch my POV of a clear of this encounter, and I'm going to talk you through each of the mechanics as they occur and how we dealt with them so that you can understand the fight yourself. Okay, so let us begin. The first cast bar you are going to see is called Obliteration, and you want to get used to this cast because it happens a lot. Obliteration deals a significant amount of raid damage to the group, and you want to make sure that everybody is fully topped going into it, because at minimum item level it does a hefty chunk of damage and you need to make sure to mitigate as necessary. The core of this fight is much the same as in normal mode, where you will see 6 crystals along the edge of the arena on the outside, each of which containing one of the 6 primals that we've encountered in the Eden raid series so far. The boss will summon combinations of these primals, and each one will create a specific shape of AoE for you to dodge or a specific simple mechanic for you to accomplish. So to run you through the primals really quickly, Ramu is out. It will create a circle AoE around the boss. Leviathan is be in the front or in the back of the boss. Make sure you are in line with the boss because the left and right sides will be unsafe. Garuda is going to target all 4 cardinals with an AoE, so you need to make sure to be intercardinal of her. And finally, Ifrit is going to target the intercardinals with massive cleaves, so you need to make sure that you are on the sides of the boss to be safe. On top of this, the Eden's Promise will also junction 2 primals, Titan and Shiva. If she junctions Titan, then there will be 2 stack damages which are taken in groups of 4 and will target the healers. If she junctions Shiva, instead the group will need to spread after the mechanic resolves. Whenever you see beams coming from one of the primal crystals to the boss, or even 2 of the primal crystals to the boss, that means that those are the mechanics she is going to trigger, and she will often trigger 2 mechanics at once. So as an example, you might get, say, in and sides, you might get out and intercardinals, things like that. Those are absolutely patterns that can happen, and the patterns are completely random, so you need to watch the crystals and make sure you are paying attention to the safe zones. When you understand and feel comfortable with this, you're going to have a very easy time dealing with these mechanics in between separate phases in this encounter. Okay, so let's start watching the POV from when the Obliteration casts. The first thing you are going to see is either a Junction Titan or a Junction Shiva cast bar. It's random, followed by a Rapturous Reach cast bar. Okay, so let's just pause for a second and run through that. When Eden's Promise junctions either Titan or Shiva, their mechanic will be executed after the next mechanic, so make sure you do not deal with it now. You instead deal with the Rapturous Reach cast first. Rapturous Reach is a cleave, also known as a haircut mechanic, and it will cleave just over half of the room based on her animation. You're going to see here that one side of her glows in a purpley colour. Avoid that side essentially and you're safe. After you've dodged this AoE, then the stockpiled junction mechanic will occur. So you'll either have 2 stacks of 4 or a spread mechanic. Make sure that you've assigned yourself 2 stacks of 4 in advance to make this mechanic very, very easy to deal with. You'll also want to use those stacks going forward for the rest of the encounter. Next up, the boss is going to cast 2 of the random primal mechanics, one after another, and this will be followed by the junctioned primal once again executing. So in the POV we had Titan, so you saw that I did the 2 AoE dodges, and then we stayed in our stacks for the Titan junction. Formless Judgment is a tank buster that affects both the first and second and aggro in the party, and is going to hit each of the tanks twice. Obviously that is assuming that your tanks are first and second on aggro, which they should be. The interesting thing about this buster is that it places a debuff on the tanks, and it places a different debuff depending on if you are first or second on aggro. First of all, it places a piercing debuff, and then it places a slashing debuff. So what you need to do to resolve this is, in between hits, you need to tank swap, because you need to make sure that you have both debuffs and you are not hit by the same attack twice in a row, or it will cause instant death. Following this is another Obliteration raid damage, and then we move into the first major phase of the encounter. The boss is going to cast Junction Shiva once again, and this time it's going to be followed up by the cast of Diamond Dust. I'm going to let this phase play out for you, and then I'm going to break it down and tell you how to solve it easily. One thing to note is you need pretty big mitigation both for and immediately after this cast to make sure that the group is healthy and can get through the mechanic easily. And this marks the resolution of the mechanics, so let's break it down. For starters, there are going to be 2 stack markers on the healers, and you're going to see a large number of AoEs on the floor, as well as the arena turning to ice. There are going to be 2 safe spots, directly opposite one another. You want to make sure that you slide into groups of 4, you can use your same groups as before, and you take the stack damages there on the edge of the arena. Following this, most of the AoEs are going to vanish, but 2 new AoEs are going to appear on your safe spots where you are currently stacked. You need to make your group slide at different directions to ensure that they are not stacked upon one another and they are also not in that AoE. And I would recommend you try to make sure that none of your players go any closer to the middle of the arena than max melee range of the boss. And I'm going to explain why. So each player is going to receive an AoE around them that is going to drop a crystal, as you saw a moment ago, on top of them. These crystals are dangerous because after a set period of time they are going to tether to 1 player each. There will be 8 crystals and 8 tethers. So if someone's dead, somebody else is getting 2 crystals, which is a death sentence. Your goal here is to pull the tethers as far away from you as possible. So say a crystal drops, you get tethered to a crystal, and then your goal is, in an ideal world, to be on the opposite side of the arena from that crystal. To make things a little bit more difficult, those crystals are going to shoot in a line AoE, so you cannot stack on another player for when those crystals shoot off, and also there is going to be a knockback which deals a significant amount of damage and makes things a little bit more difficult. You are able to be knocked back if you wish to resolve this mechanic, but for me personally, I found it much easier to shorecast this mechanic and just move to my position myself. So your mileage may vary, whatever you think is safer is what you should do. So we're going to play it out, and I'm going to show you what you do once again, and you can determine how you do it. So the cast bar goes off, the stacks appear and the players spread to their positions. Then following this, each player is given a predetermined direction to spread. It will be either left or right, inner or outer. Mine, for example, is left outer, and my Samurai, who's next to me, is left inner. Then we stand in those spots, the crystals drop, we can move as normal, we go to the safe spots here, prepare, mitigate, heal, and then after this I use Surecast, the knockback goes off, and you pull your tether. That's the sequence of events, and you can do that consistently every time. You want to make sure that everyone is healed and shielded, and then after this you can move to the center and the phase is resolved and the boss will go into another obliteration to mark the end of the phase. After this, Eden's Promise is going to junction Titan, and she is going to play out a sequence of events using Titan's mechanics from E12S. These mechanics may look very overwhelming at first glance, but they're actually incredibly scripted and very, very easy to undertake, so do not worry too much. The mechanic is first executed by a cast of Earthen Fury, and then I'm going to watch the events play out and let you guys see how it all unfolds. Okay, so as you can see, there are going to be some large circles around the edge of the arena, each of which with a small Titan bomb next to it. At the same time, players are going to receive different debuffs. Just to run you through them again very quickly, if you receive a blue debuff, you're going to have a large explosion around you that cannot be intersected by any other explosion. If you have a yellow marker above your head, you may not stack with any other player and must be alone. And if you have an orange debuff, you must stack with at least one other player in order to survive. The indicators for how you position in this fight are very simple. You see the circles on the edge of the arena. As long as you're in that circle near your jail, you will tether to the mine, and that will allow you to execute the mechanic. There are 3 patterns, one after another, that are preset with no randomness, and I'm going to tell you where to position for each and every one. To make things easier, I recommend DPS sticking to one side of the arena and tanks and healers sticking to another. For example, DPS could be south and west, and healers could be north and east with tanks. That's how we did it, and we found it incredibly consistent. In the first pattern, we had our blue marked player go south, we had our yellow marked players go north, west and east, and we had our orange marked players go in pairs in 2 groups of 2 to northwest and northeast. 2 DPS and 2 of the tanks and healers will always be targeted by orange, so you can use the positions priority of south and west for the DPS and north and east for the tanks and healers. At least one of the tanks and healers will always get yellow. At least one of the DPS will always get yellow, and those will take west and east spots. And then 1 DPS and 1 tank or healer will get the blue and the yellow. The flex yellow goes north and the blue goes south. Simple. The second pattern has 2 blue AoEs, 6 orange markers. This is also incredibly simple. The blues go north and south, and the oranges go west and east, making sure the DPS oranges go west and healer tank oranges go east. This resolves that mechanic as well very, very easily. For the final set of Titan mechanics, there will instead be 2 blue markers. Those will be positioned southwest and southeast. They will always target a tank healer and then a DPS, so that's very easy. The 2 yellow affected players will go northwest and northeast. Once again, it will be a tank healer and a DPS. And then the remaining 4 players will go and stack in north with their orange markers. One thing to note is that you need to heal between each and every one of these mechanics because they hit like a truck. And when all of this is finished, the boss will phase into another obliteration to mark the completion of the phase. This is actually a very, very mechanically simple phase, and you should not worry about it at all. Following this, the boss will do another cast, which is another sequence of a random 2 primals with safe spot AoEs that you can dodge into. But at the same time, the Guardian of Eden from behind the boss will cast an Obliteration Beam at you. This is a party share, so you need to make sure that where you dodge to, you dodge as a party. For us, we assigned a pre-positioned dodge spot of making sure that we were between the C and B markers wherever we dodged, so that everyone would be together. This is another very simple one to resolve, as long as your group has a little bit of planning. This is once again followed up by another Obliteration raid damage from the boss. The next cast you are going to see is Stock. Now, Stock is pretty simple, but it's also a little bit of a memory game. When Eden's Promise stocks, she is going to channel 2 of the crystals once again as normal, standard sequence of events, but she will not execute them. Instead, she will hold on to them for later, and you will need to remember them because later in the encounter she is going to execute whichever 2 primals she has stocked. So we're going to ignore the stock for now, and I'm going to tell you when it executes, so when you do the fight, you can remember when the stock executes and make sure that you know where to dodge from there. After the stock takes place, there will be 2 more stacks in your standard groups of 4. They can be taken, and I would recommend you take them just on the left and on the right of the boss's hitbox. At least the way we do things, that's how you set things up. I would also recommend you spin the boss for this mechanic 90 degrees to make sure that she is facing either west or east. This may not be the completely standard strat done by many groups that I've seen, but I think this is a decent strat that is pretty easy to execute, and this gives you the setup that you need to do it effectively. After those 2 stack damages go off, 2 Chiseled Sculptures are going to spawn in their place. Now these Chiseled Sculptures have a very interesting mechanic. Each one of them is going to tether a random player and give them a number between 1 and 4. So you will have 2 people with 1, 2 people with 2, 2 people with 3, and 2 people with 4. You need to look at which statue you are tethered to and what your number is. Following this, the statue is going to shoot laser beams at each person in sequence. So if you are number 3 in the left statue, you will be the 3rd person the statue shoots a laser beam at. 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. To make matters a little bit worse, before this mechanic goes off, the boss is going to do once again the mechanic we have seen in the bar, Rapturous Reach, which will give us either a north or south safe spot. Quickly run to the safe spot and make sure that you know which number you are and who you are tethered to. If you are number 1, at this point, make sure that you look and position yourself at one of the intercardinals. So if you are looking at the west dummy as your partner, if you are tethered to the west dummy, that is, you'll be either northwest or southwest depending on which side was safe. And if you are on the right Chiseled Sculpture, you'll be northeast or southeast. The rest of the group will be directly north or south. After the first beam goes off, reposition the group to south and make sure that the second beam players move out. At this point, you have a lot more space to play with, and you can even go true west or true east to shoot your beams if you wish. Once 2 beams have gone out, you want to look to the south side of the platform. Here is where you are going to see the Guardian of Eden's fist on either the southwest or the southeast edge of the arena, preparing to slam down. This slam will occur immediately after the 4th laser beams resolve, causing a massive knockback. So you need to find where the southwest or southeast is about to be slammed and make sure that the party is there, standing on that edge of the arena in time. This may sound a little bit difficult because, like I said, this resolves immediately after the 4th beam. So 1st, 2nd and 3rd beams are very easy, you can just take them west and east. The 4th beam, however, is a little bit more complex because we like to shoot the beams in a triangle formation. So let's say, for example, the fist is about to slam on the southwest. After the 3rd beams goes off, the rest of the party can already position there. The 4th beams will shoot west and south from the Chiseled Sculptures, and then they will have enough time to easily run to the safe spot and be knocked back effectively. On the southeast it's the same, so you would have east and south for the beams. So whoever is the furthest person away from the knockback and is assigned number 4 will shoot their beam south. Simple, that will resolve the mechanic. Following this, the boss is going to execute the stocked mechanics that we talked about earlier, so you're going to have to dodge an AoE very quickly after you get knocked back. This happens on the release cast bar. Following this, another obliteration will occur to mark the end of the phase. Following this, Formless Judgment is going to happen once again, so cool down and mitigate as appropriate, and prepare for what many said was the hardest phase of the fight, but there are incredibly easy strats for this now coming up. The boss will stock once again 2 random primal mechanics, so make sure to remember them for later, and then we're going to see a number of lions spawn along the edge of the arena. We'll play this sequence out, and then I'm going to sit and break it down for you. Okay, so that was a lot, right? It looked quite terrifying, and yeah, that's true. But I'm going to break it down for you, and then I'm going to show you the strat that I believe you should use for it, and I think you will have a great time doing so. So, 6 lions are going to spawn. 4 are going to spawn on the intercardinals, close to the center. Those are smaller lions. And those small lions are going to tether 4 random players. On top of this, there will be large lions that spawn on the north and south of the arena. So, the 4 small lions are going to tether to 4 random players, and periodically, for a total of 3 times, they are going to shoot 45-degree fire cones at them. The large lions are going to shoot a fire beam that drops a fire puddle on top of the player that is closest to them, once again 3 times. All of these mechanics occur at the same time. In between these mechanics, you will receive Rapturous Reach dodges, and you will also receive a knockback mechanic that deals a decent number of raid damages, and after the second beams have occurred, the preloaded stock is going to execute. So just to run you through the sequence, it's lions shoot beams into knockback, lions shoot beams into stock execute, lions shoot beams into Rapturous Reach, and at the very start of the phase there's also another Rapturous Reach. So that's what happens, and it's important to note that if a player ends up being hit by 2 of the fire beams or 2 of the fire puddles back to back, they will die. So you have to be hit by 1 thing at a time and no more. Instead of showing you my POV for this, I'm going to show you a diagram that I made. This is a great strategy for this phase, and I'm going to get POV and make an individual video on this too, because this mechanic stumbled a lot of groups. There are 4 markers, 1, 2, 3 and 4, placed just outside the boss's hitbox on the intercardinals. All you have to do is the player that is tethered to a lion goes to the opposite marker diagonally and stands there. Once all 4 players do this, the 4 fire beams will shoot across in such a way that they do not intersect, they do not hit any player twice, all players receive full melee uptime, and then you can go back to those exact same positions after every intermediary mechanic is resolved. So for example, if I'm tethered to the northwest lion, I will go to the southeast marker. I will resolve my fire, I will do the knockback, which I would recommend you shortcast, you do your second fire, you resolve your stocked cast, you do your third fire, and then you dodge Rapturous Reach. For a player who is not targeted by a tether, you have a slightly different job. You're going to assign yourself roles. It will either be tanks and healers unaffected, or DPS unaffected. You're going to have to take it in turns to bait the fire puddles from the big lions. I would recommend you do the first bait directly under his hitbox facing outside, the second bait to the left or right of his hitbox facing downwards, and the third bait on the other side of his hitbox facing downwards, because those beams from the large lions, who knows, either way they're massive and you want to face them to the outside of the arena. So for an untethered player, the sequence of events looks like this. 1 player baits the fire AoE, the other player can either stand on a tethered player or they can just stand in a safe spot, which will be just to the north and south of the boss's hitbox. Following this, the knockback occurs, where the other player who did not do a bait will do one of the second baits. Then, after that, the stocked mechanic will resolve, and then the player that did the first bait will do the third bait. You can assign roles for this. For example, we had, if it was tanks and healers, it would be tanks, then healers, then tanks. If it was DPS, it would be melee, then range, then melee. This is very easy to set up pairs and groups for, so you can do it as normal. Following this, Obliteration will cast once again, and the boss will stock again, making sure to grab 2 primals, and you need to make sure that you remember those mechanics. The next phase is simple but deceptive. You need to remember that stock because it will not be happening yet. Following the stock, the boss is going to junction either Titan or Shiva, so stack or spread. And then a few seconds after this, the boss is going to cast, but she will not cast what she stocked, she will cast another sequence of mechanics. So you do this sequence first, then the junction, and you have to remember the stocked mechanic from earlier. Following this, Obliteration will happen, so another raid damage, and then you're going to get the inverse junction as before. So if you got Titan the first time, you will get Shiva this time, and if you got Shiva the first time, you will get Titan this time. And then, finally, the stocked mechanic will release. After this, it's incredibly simple. The boss will just do tank busters and raid damage, and then auto attacks until enraged. So you either kill her, or she kills you. I really hope you found this a little bit useful. Enjoy the cutscene, and I hope that you have a great experience with this encounter, and I wish you the best of luck with the Oracle of Darkness, which is going to be your next opponent. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day.